So we're seeing more lately, and yet we're getting less. Anomalous objects in our skies, flashing lights over the ocean, so called drones over New Jersey back in January and February, addressed by the president himself. But ask yourself, when's the last time a national institution analyzed one of these sightings quickly, publicly, and credibly? When was the last time that happened? Certainly not 2022, that weird congressional hearing that suddenly went nowhere, where they're going to come out with all these UFO whistleblowers, and then it never happened, at least not to the extent that many people wanted. The backlog is real, right? People are seeing things and it's not getting properly analyzed. The official silence is louder than ever. You file a report with the actual office, Arrow. You file a report, and you're lucky to hear back in a year. You're lucky to hear back in 3 years. What if I told you in 2025 you don't need to wait? You don't need to wait for some back office at the Pentagon to tell you whether or not UFOs are real. You can run local AI that can analyze video, detect objects, track anomalies, even high-speed ones that the human eye just can't detect, and generate enhanced still shots from the video that you capture, right on your own system, basically for free. These models are free to download. You go to lmstudio.ai, that's the website, lmstudio.ai, and they've got a really good Windows and Mac app that lets you download and install fairly easily, like an app store, but for AIs. Lets you install local AI, and then you can do image and video analysis without having to feed it all into the cloud. Think about how valuable that is. Think about how intrinsically useful that is, that you can do video analysis even if you're not connected to the internet. And if you find something really extraordinary, you don't need the big cloud to know about it until you're ready to show the world. So, local AI models at this point, like Lava and Mixtral, a number of others with Whisper, and with object tracking models, you can identify flight paths. You can compare movement speeds, again, even with high-speed objects that the human eye can barely detect. And you can cross-reference weather anomalies without asking anyone for permission. Again, you can do this stuff disconnected from the internet. Pretty incredible. It's not about proving everything's aliens or proving that aliens don't exist. We don't know yet. It's about reclaiming our own sense-making layer, right? Not relying on some UFO grifter or some bureaucrat, again, in a back office at the Pentagon to put down his cigarette like the smoking man in the X-Files in the 90s. Maybe the smoking man doesn't actually know that much. Maybe the proverbial deep state man who's keeping his boot on the files, not the Epstein files, but the UFO files. Maybe this individual actually doesn't know much more about these things than we do. And how troubling is that possibility? But we'll know soon enough. We're deploying, again, local AIs, a bunch of high-def video cameras and stuff, and even some aviation resources. And we'll get to the bottom of this. If anybody can, Fulcrum can. So, to close here, local AI is the new telescope. It was only a few hundred years ago that the first telescopes, were made in Europe in the Renaissance, the modern telescope anyways. It's only been a few hundred years. Now we have a digital telescope right on your desktop. It's also the new radar station. It's the new truth machine. The new authority, detached and parallel to legacy authorities. So all very interesting. Be sure to subscribe for future breakdowns of some of the objects that we've seen. We'll provide footage and analysis. And by the way, speaking of space stuff, quick little note here. There's this wild object called 3I Atlas that's been generating new images as it passes near Mars. So we talked about this over the summer, and we said in a few months it'll be approaching close to Mars and the inner solar system. And now we're at that moment, pretty close anyways. So this is an interstellar object, the third one ever confirmed. And on October 3rd, it made its closest approach to Mars, about 29 million kilometers away. And Mars orbiters were able to capture footage of it as a faint moving dot. It looks like a string of dots, but that's due to the exposure time. It's really just a dot. As it closes in toward the sun later this month, its tail and coma are intensifying. The point here is that even cosmic debris is now under observation. Satellites, orbiters, and ground telescopes are all watching. That same level of observational power is now available to you locally with AI. If you can analyze anomalous photos and videos yourself, you're no longer an outsider. You become, this is like a Galileo moment. If you have a telescope, but you're not really allowed to analyze what you're looking at, that's quite different from pulling in digital data, pulling in footage with original metadata that anybody can confirm was recorded at a certain location and a certain time, and then feeding that into multiple AI systems to see what they think, not to hear what some boomer at the Pentagon has to say, but to hear what the AIs think. And aside from the link to that site where you can download a free AI, I'll put a link to that in the description. I'll also put a link to my book that tells you how to do this stuff in greater detail if you want a walkthrough. That's why that booklet was so popular on Amazon earlier this year, is I told people how to do this, how to install one of these things, even if you're not that computer savvy, no coding or anything required. But I think it's a game changer. Even if you're just a photographer or a journalist, to be able to feed your stuff in at the end of the day, whether it's protest footage or freaking UFOs, as we're hunting for, to be able to feed that in something that can catch stuff you're never going to catch, can give you, bullet points of what's interesting about the video. Total game changer, absolute game changer.